2025 was a massive year for Baldur's Gate 3, and I wanted to break down some of the biggest changes that came to Baldur's Gate 3 in 2025. Patch 8 brought us 12 new subclasses, photo mode, and crossplay with mods. I did a video in the past where I broke down the 10 biggest changes from that, and I gotta say, there's actually a lot more than 10 changes that came after the dust has settled and we saw the impact of everything that was added. On top of this, we also received 4,000 new mods on Mod.io. I did a video yesterday where I broke down the top 300 of those. You can check that out if you're curious. But we also received 5,000 new mods on Nexus, and the modding community is just heating up. I expect 2026 will bring a lot of great things as well. But to dive right into some of the things that changed in the base game without mods, I first had to bring up the biggest anomaly now in Baldur's Gate 3. This changed the meta, Shadowblade. This is a crazy spell. It was present in the game. You could save Arabella's parents and get a ring that gave you a 2d8 version of Shadowblade. What's crazier is there is now this one, which is absurdly broken, with 4d8 of psychic damage plus your modifiers. It also gets advantage if you're lightly or heavily obscured, which means you're likely getting this often, and even furthermore if you're playing as someone that can see in darkness. But this damage gets even crazier when you consider the things like Resonance Stone, which you can grab in Act 2, doubling the damage of Shadowblade. So it now deals more damage than any other weapon in the game, with other short swords in its class doing a 1d6 of damage instead of a 4d8. But this gets even crazier when you consider some of the other spells that got added. We also got Staggering Smite in Patch 8, which adds an additional 46 of psychic damage. So that's 64 damage, and if you have the Resonance Stone, that can be a 128 damage. Absolutely absurd. This was also surprisingly a massive buff for Gale. If you play as Gale, you can get a special Shadow spell slot in Act 2, which gives you a level 3 spell slot. Why this is important is, well, you can play as an Eldritch Knight Gale, who normally would only get level 2 spell slots, and then get access to the level 3 version of Shadowblade, which gives you, instead of the 2d8, a 3d8. So yeah, the Eldritch Knight also got a massive buff because the new cantrip Booming Blade will actually proc their war magic. So if you start off combat with an attack using Booming Blade, you can then do a bonus action attack. And with your 3d6 or 3d8 of psychic damage that can be doubled, Gale automatically becomes one of the absolute best builds in the game. Some of the unintended consequences of such a powerful spell such as Shadowblade. I don't want to keep yapping about Shadowblade because I'm sure a lot of people hate this as much as I do. The Ring of Arcane Synergy, I'll show you guys a cool little trick here. Whenever you attack with a cantrip, you get your spellcasting modifier added to the damage. What's cooler about this, I get asked about it all the time, you can make Shadowblade look blue. This looks really sweet, so yeah, if you ever see in my videos my weapon looking nice and glowing like that, that's how you do it. Also, that completely just took him out there. Now, we should also talk about some of the other spells that we got too, because this actually gave the cleric such a big boost. Now, a lot of people complain about Shadowheart missing all the time. That's because Sacred Flame uses a dex save. This has a wisdom save, which everything you see in Act 1 is likely not going to have a high wisdom. It also deals more damage despite being not as good of a damage type as radiant damage. Again, having a better save with wisdom saves is really nice for just being able to land your attacks. I already mentioned Staggering Smite, but this is available to the Hexblade Warlock, and it's very powerful. And what's funny is this is actually a Paladin spell from D&D, but the Paladins don't get level 4 spell slots due to only having level 12 in the game, so it's cool to see that. Another Smite spell, which is already available to Bards, now available to the Hexblade Warlock as well. This is the equivalent of a level 5 Smite, and it can possibly banish the target, dealing an additional 5d10 of force damage. And it's cool because you can do a ranged version or a melee version, and you can see there, yeah, that's 90 damage, but that's actually a lot more than 90. We'll get to the subclasses in just one moment, but one of the nice things is the Death Domain allows you to cast cantrips on 2 targets, and with Toll the Dead being a cantrip, that gives you some insane early game damage. We also got the Bursting Sinew cantrip here, which lets you explode corpses. This is fun, despite not being that amazing. It's a dex save, so it has some of the same problems that Sacred Flame has in the early game, but it's fun, and that's what this is all about. But yeah, there's honestly nothing better than Shadowblade plus Blooming Blade now. It's actually such a crazy combination. I also want to segue into talking about the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power. Everyone hypes up the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, and I've talked about this and I've had people like hate on me online for some reason. This item's fixed in Patch 8. It previously was broken in previous patches. I just want to make it clear that this is now working as intended. This gives you a crazy buff when you're using Shadowblade because it says when you hit a target with a spell or a cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity. So this counts whenever you use Booming Blade. But what's even crazier is it actually just accounts whenever you have Shadowblade in your hand and you attack with your Shadowblade. So this will proc that gear, giving you the Arcane Acuity for 2 stacks there, just on a melee attack. So you don't actually have to do any type of spell expending. You can use Booming Blade And you can also use Divine Smite. This makes one of the most powerful builds in the game even more powerful. The Hexblade Warlock multiclass of the Paladin, or just regularly the Fiend before patch 8. One of the most powerful combinations, which now gets Booming Blade. They can get the extra attack stacking. They get Shadow Blade. It's just absurdly powerful. Now, my favorite part about patch 8 was the 12 new subclasses. It added fan favorites like the Hexblade, and I think this is the one that most people like the most. It's typically, for most players, going to be better than the others because you're going to get heavy armor or medium armor proficiency and shields along with some very powerful spells. It's a little bit more straightforward and kind of melee focused, but a strong choice. The others are also really great too, but the Warlock, I would say, got the biggest buffs in patch 8 because they get the Staggering Smite, they get Booming Blade. They already had the best cantrip with Eldritch Blast. They now just got another really great one for melee. But honestly, my personal favorite subclass from patch 8 was the Shadow Magic Sorcerer. Now, honestly, I kind of underrated this thing at first when it first came out. It's just, Darkness is so powerful in Baldur's Gate 3 that I think this could potentially be the strongest Sorcerer. Yes, Draconic's nice with their built-in mage armor and the extra charisma modifier on damage, and the Storm Sorcerer gets some really good spells. Shadow Magic gets a dog. You can't argue that logic. It also gets Darkness, which again is kind of broken, and they can see in that darkness, meaning it's great to pair with the Hexblade. Honestly, those two are my new favorites. It's hard to not go with them at this point. I also really like the Oath of the Crown Paladin that got added. It's good as a dip because you get the Righteous Clarity, which can add proficiency bonus to attack rolls. So this opened up new multi-classes with things like the Bard, which previously used that. It's a hard oath to keep, though. I want to be honest with you guys. The Vengeance is likely going to be better for most people most times. But this one gets Spirit Guardians, one of the best spells in the game. So if you want it, this is more of a defensive protector style class. If you're playing with your friends, this is a great one to protect them with. We also got the Arcane Archer Fighter. I like fighters a lot, like many others do. This has a really fun ability here with the Arcane Shot Banishing Arrow, which you can banish your target. This at level 3 is kind of absurd because of how good banishing someone is, especially if you can get this to land, because it's a charisma save, meaning the enemies are not going to have the typically not going to have the stats to protect themselves with this. There's not a lot of charisma characters compared to the other stat types. This also gives you some guaranteed hits like Seeking Arrow, turning your arrows into magic missile, lights. There's Piercing Arrow, which is okay. This can actually proc some of the gear like the Bow of the Banshee on multiple targets at a time, which is really fun. The Blinding Arrows, which can blind a target, can be nice if you have rogues on the team. And the Bursting Arrow kind of gives you a area of effect attack despite not being super strong. I like the Arcane Archer. We also got the Giant Barbarian, which has the Giant's Rage. Turns yourself into a large character. Amazing. But what's better than this is it also gets the Giant's Boot at level 5, so you can run around kicking people. And then at level 10, you get the Mighty Impel, which lets you do a suplex and backbreak people. It's really a fun class, and it's comparable in strength. I think the Berserker's a little bit stronger as a thrower, but it's a good class nonetheless. Druid got the Circle of the Stars here, which was a really fun subclass because with this, it gives you a bit of radiant damage, and you can also kind of fill the role of a cleric in a certain sense. If you want to do like the Radiating Orb style builds to protect your teammates, you get your Starry Forms here, which lets you switch between them and heal your team or buff your saves or even just do a Luminous Arrow attack, dealing radiant damage. It's a fun one, and again, it's got Wild Shape, so it can always protect itself with extra health. And honestly, my third favorite subclass of patch 8 was the Bladesinging Wizard. I like Gish style builds that let you spellcast and melee attack. This is really great because you can boost your armor class quite a bit with this Bladesinging stance. It has custom animations where you cast from your blade. But on top of all of that, you're a wizard. You can learn spells from scrolls, so you can learn some of the crazy ones like Dethrone and Artistry of War, or just your regular like Udaluk's Freezing Sphere, which no one else has access to but the wizard. Versatile and fills the kind of niche, like you got yourself the Hexblade. This is a different flavor, and it's a fun one. And we also got the Swashbuckler Rogue. This one I actually really like, because like the other rogues, is a good dip, but you can do sneak attacks without having to have your advantage triggering it, which is fantastic. But level 4 gives really fun abilities. You get the Dirty Trick Flick of the Wrist, using your charisma to make the enemy possibly drop their weapon. This is a bonus action attack. You use your main hand weapon on it, and it possibly disarms them. So it's technically a better attack. It's crazy. You also have Vicious Mockery here as a bonus action, again, giving an enemy disadvantage on their attack roll is really good. And you also have the Sand Toss here using a Dex. These two use your Charisma, and this one uses your Dex, and you throw sand in their eye, pocket sand. It's really funny too. Now, unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the College of Glamour Bard, but if you like bards, you want a fun one, I did make a Ice Caster Bard, the College of Winter Spirits. I definitely recommend checking that out. The Sword Bard is just so strong that it makes other choices a little bit less desirable, I guess, and I guess that's one thing that I did with my mod is I tried to balance it around the Sword Bard, but made it weaker than the Sword Bard, but still very strong. Just that thing is absurdly powerful. And the Glamour Bard misses the mark. It does have a special ability to like heal your teammates, and then also use a bonus action command, but there's other ways to do that that are a little bit more powerful. The Monk also got the Drunken Master Monk. Not much to see here, unfortunately. It's just not, again, the Monk has the open hand, which is such a powerful subclass that you can do it for the roleplay purposes, but even then, you probably just want to play an open hand Monk and play the roleplay in your head, because, yeah. We also got the Swarm Keeper Ranger, which is a fun one, especially if you like bugs and the thematic sense of it. But yeah, it's cool, but I think the Gloomstalker is my favorite Ranger. And of course, patch 8 brought us photo mode here, which you can do some pretty silly stuff with. There's now a lot of mods for photo mode, which lets you do some hilarious dances like you're seeing right here. Don't ya dance. This is the Sarah's Silly Cauldron full of dances here. You got the Sherry Lady dance, Oops, I Did It Again, Toxic, Crazy in Love, and many others. You don't just have to dance in photo mode. It's obviously here for taking photos. And again, there's so many amazing photo mode mods. One of my favorites is the Faerun Fashionistas Mega Pack, which has almost 700 photo mode mods, or 700 photo mode poses all in one with a ton of different faces and expressions. So yeah, this is a really big piece that got added to the game. Now, photo mode is not for everyone. Not everyone likes to take pictures, but another thing that was added is crossplay. So you can now go and play multiplayer, adding your friends from PlayStation 5, Xbox, or PC. It doesn't matter. And what's actually one thing that I want to mention is people I've seen complain about photo or crossplay on my videos before. They don't like how it has some issues with mods. I just want to mention there's no other game that has crossplay with mods. Like, this is like unheard of. You can't do that. Skyrim doesn't have multiplayer. You can't do that. Like, this is such a big thing. So obviously there are going to be some issues that could potentially pop up. That's the nature of modding, and I say it all the time. So yeah, this I want to recognize Larian for doing, because this is huge. Putting a crossplay with mods is next level. They could have just did it so that you could play with your friends without mods, but yeah, they went the whole 9 yards there. That is something to just be really excited about for the future of gaming. And another thing I do want to mention is if you play on Xbox, especially the Xbox Series S, you normally would not be able to do split screen because it just didn't have the processing power, but Larian went through and made that also happen. Another thing I want to mention is that split screen uses a lot of resources. That's why I wasn't able to do it at launch. And this was actually something that Microsoft allowed Larian to make a change on, because normally they have to have device parity between the Series S and the Series X. Baldur's Gate 3 broke that just because split screen wasn't possible on the Series S at the time. They made it happen in patch 8, and I've heard from some people that they really enjoy that. And also for Steam players, you got trading cards, and I'm still looking for a Gale card if anyone has that and like to trade. But yeah, this is something that's really fun, and I think it's super cool. Another thing, there were a lot of bug fixes. I did mention a few of them in this video. I was really stoked to see that they fixed the Battle Mage's power gloves. They also made changes to things like the Water Mirror Madon, which used to be able to set up wet in a huge area, which made cold and lightning damage casters really overpowered. They nerfed it so that no longer happens, and yeah, I think that was a good change. It should probably happen a little while back, but I actually did a full video that was an hour and some odd minutes long, talking about all the changes that came with patch 8, and yeah, there's 20,000 words in their patch notes, so yeah, I went through over all of it. It was a long video. Another thing, optimization. They made a few changes, and actually on the latest hotfix, they made some changes for PlayStation 5 that I noticed were pretty nice. Most notably, whenever you're in Act 3, it gets a little laggy with the amount of NPCs, and I don't know about you guys, but I noticed much better performance after patch 8. They did some work here, and both I play on PS5 and on PC, and both actually got changes. They also made some changes with the companions. Now, Halsin and Minthara, that's something that's gotten a lot of updates in the previous patches, and it was no stranger in patch 8. They had to update some of the stuff regarding camps, and just making it a little bit easier. Previously, you weren't, actually, when I first played the game at launch, Minthara was like near impossible to recruit if you're on a good line playthrough, and Larian listened and they made changes. They actually made a lot of changes with Halsin's story as well, and made him a companion when he previously wasn't throughout early access, which is just really nice of Larian. And yeah, patch 8 also brought some changes to that as well. There's also just general gameplay fixes and other things regarding that. And one thing that I'm excited for is I've been making some mods for Baldur's Gate 3, and they actually added some enhanced toolkit capabilities with patch 8, so there's going to be, in the future, you're going to see some more mods that you might not have thought were possible due to some of the new stuff that is added, and people are getting creative with the toolkit. So I guess this is just the future to say, I think 2026 is going to have a lot of amazing stuff for players, and a lot of great things to look forward to in the modding community. We had 4,000 new mods on Mod.io. I did, again, a video breaking down the best of them yesterday. And I think we'll see another 4,000 plus get added to Mod.io in the new year, 2026. So let me know your thoughts on the biggest changes that came in patch 8 of Baldur's Gate 3. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and I hope you guys all have a great day.